Welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm Marcia Bistrin. I'm the president of the New York League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, and I am delighted to be here with the East Hampton Environmental Coalition, a coalition of 12 independent environmental groups that have been active in protecting East Hampton's environment, in some cases for a short time and others for over 40 years. They're here today to outline the Citizens Guide for East Hampton, a guide for candidates running for office, for town supervisor and for the town board. They will be able to tell you the array of issues that are included in this, but the critical thing is that they've come together with a comprehensive agenda that they're putting before elected officials and that they will hold those elected officials accountable for. And with that, I'd like each of the groups to talk about their issue, and then we can take questions. I'm delighted to turn it over to Bob DeLuca, who heads up the group for the East End, and I think is one of the mainstays of the environmental community out here, not only in East Hampton, but in the East End.
I live long enough. Anyway, thank you, Marcia, and thanks everyone for coming out. I think, from our perspective, this green guide is critical, and if you step back in time a little bit, you may remember that when the town adopted its comprehensive plan the last time around, there was a very strong effort made to create sort of a citizen-driven agenda for environmental protection across the town. Well, the economy and other things have happened to this town like a lot of places, and that agenda has slipped off the front burner, which is exactly why we're here to try to put it back on. And among the many issues that we're going to talk about, the one that I want to talk about is the issue of water. And in the last 4 or 5 years, what we have seen, and in large part thanks to some of the work that's been done by the Suffolk County Health Department, every 15 years the County Health Department puts together a comprehensive water resources report. And the draft of that report is telling us some very serious things about the quality of our water. Overall, the county is telling us that our water quality is declining, and it's declining consistently. And here on the East End, we have several issues that we need to be very concerned about. One of those issues is we have the greatest concentration of private wells any place in Suffolk County. Of the 50,000 or so private wells that are left, more than 2/3 of them are in the 5 East End towns. We also know that our bays and harbors are beginning to show lots of signs of stress. All you have to do is open the paper to see brown tides, red tides, rust tides, toxic blue-green algae. All of these things are indicators, and as we start to do the research, we find that there's a direct relationship between our groundwater quality and the surface water quality. The County Health Department tells us that over the last 15 years, nitrogen levels have gone up from 40% to as much as 200% in the aquifers beneath our feet. That's our principal source of drinking water, and if we don't start paying attention, we're going to find ourselves in a very costly position to provide fresh, clean drinking water to people. And at the same time, we now know that there is a direct linkage between the quality of that groundwater and the health of our bays and harbors. Through a lot of research that's been done by Stony Brook, the Nature Conservancy, and other researchers, the amount of nitrogen that's getting into our surface waters is having a detrimental effect, and we have to find a way to reel that back. So when we look at this agenda, we're looking at a couple of very specific items. One, first and foremost, this town many years ago was a leader on many environmental issues, and with a proposal for a wastewater management study for this town, it's on the cusp of that leadership again. But that project's been in trouble, and we'd like to see people who are running for office embrace the value of a wastewater management plan for East Hampton Town, because that's the way that we get our groundwater cleaned up, and that's the way that we ultimately get our surface waters cleaned up. If we don't have that foundation, it's going to take us 15 to 20 years to figure out where we should start. That has to be a priority. We also have to make it a priority to look at the open land that's left and prioritize those areas that are most critical for groundwater and surface water protection. Of the many properties that we could purchase, we need to look at water protection. We need to start looking at pharmaceuticals and pesticides. County Health Department tells us we're finding anti-seizure medications, we're finding other types of medications in the drinking water and groundwater, and we don't even know what the implications of those contamination elements are. So we have to start looking at that and finding a way to deal with those issues. We also have to look at the pesticides. In the county's report, half of the private wells that were tested showed signs of pesticide contamination, and 40% of those had more than one pesticide or pesticide byproduct in them. Right now in Suffolk County, there's 117 different pesticides and pesticide byproducts in the water. The state of New York is looking to create a pesticide management plan, and leaders in this town have to ask the state to move forward on that. And also we need to do what we can to restore the fisheries and the health of our bays and harbors by building up the capacity of our local fisheries here in East Hampton Town. It's very important for providing shellfish and finfish back into these estuaries, so as they do come back to health, there's fish and shellfish there for the future. And that's just some of the main things that we want to see looked at. But first and foremost, we have to deal with wastewater. We have to deal with the relationship between groundwater and surface water. And anybody who's running for office, we hope will make those priority as they go forward in working with the community. But there's other kinds of water issues as well, and for that, I'm going to talk a little bit, I'll hand it off to Jeremy so he can talk about coastal waters.
Jeremy Samuelson, Executive Director, Concerned Citizens of Montauk. I think we all really still don't know quite how to feel about Hurricane Sandy last year. We have this sense that it was a wake-up call for our region and for our community, but that hasn't yet been translated into action. And so as a community, I think we have to ask a question, which is, are we better prepared today to deal with the changing world around us than we were either immediately before or immediately after Hurricane Sandy struck almost a year ago? And I think an honest assessment, an honest answer to that question would have to be that if we are any better off, it is only marginally so. We have a real crisis on our hands. We know that in 20 years or in 30 years or in 50 years or even in 2 years, the world is going to look different around us. The sea level is rising. We have increased storm frequency, increased storm intensity. We have climatically driven weather changes that are climatically driven that we haven't even begun to understand the implications of yet. Whether the sea rises by 2 feet or 20 feet is almost moot. What can't be moot in our response is a deliberate effort that engages the community, that it engages decision makers, comes up with funding streams that actually identify problems and solve those problems in a community-based fashion. Right now, I would argue that a year after Hurricane Sandy, we have all of the same problems and no more solutions than we had a year ago. And as long as that remains the case, then our way of life, our economic viability, and our habitat are all in peril. There is no reason to think that we are going to face a better lot 2 years, 5 years, or 20 years from now unless we get serious about going down the road of getting prepared for community resiliency. And what does that mean? That means taking a hard look at the most vulnerable areas in town and making really hard decisions about how we are going to accept the new reality that will befall us in the future. And whether we are going to stand in the face of nature and oppose that with money and might that eventually will be overwhelmed by forces that are beyond our control, or whether we will acknowledge that we are staring down something that is far greater and we have no control over, and acknowledge that we have to adapt rather than try to overcome the forces of nature. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is prepared to spend somewhere between $20 and $40 million on the ocean side in downtown Montauk and something approaching $40 million on the north side in Montauk over by Coaltion Shores. A combined $80 million that doesn't even take into account the additional $17 million that the Army Corps of Engineers is proposing to spend in Montauk at the toe of the lighthouse. So we are going to spend an amount of money that comes pretty darn close to $100 million of federal money preparing our community for a response to the changing world around us. And you know what we're going to get for that? Antiquated thinking and more of the same and more stone structures that we could have built 40 years ago if we had the political will and the money to make these mistakes a long time ago when the Fire Island to Montauk Point reformulation study was first started. We didn't have the guts to do the wrong thing then. We haven't had the guts to do the wrong thing for the last 40 years. And suddenly, we're going to take exactly the wrong lesson from Hurricane Sandy. We're going to take a pile of federal money that totals almost $100 million, and we're going to spend it on antiquated thinking, doing exactly the wrong things that we knew were wrong when this process got started 40 years ago. The difference now is that there's a hurry-up mentality in the wake of Hurricane Sandy that says we have political will and suddenly there's money available, so let's be seen to do something. Unfortunately, that something isn't the right thing. And so we're going to spend collectively $100 million, or pretty close to it in Montauk, trying to make ourselves a resilient coastal, a less vulnerable community to coastal storms, coastal threats, and you know what? We're going to get it wrong. So it's time for our elected officials, for the new leadership in East Hampton Town, the folks who are seeking your votes as part of this current election crisis, or excuse me, this current election, to step out in front of the problem. I hope it's not a crisis. To step out in front of the problem and say, hang on, hit the pause button. We have almost $100 million that's available to Montauk in particular for making our community more resilient. Are we going to do the right thing, or are we going to do the wrong thing? I'll leave it there, except to say that I think there's a question that underlies this, and that is simply, for each of the issues that you're going to hear about here today, is there hope that a year from now, with bold leadership and initiative and smart thinking and collaboration amongst community leaders, whether elected or folks from organizations or people who are just representing their own businesses or families' best interests, are we going to be in a better place a year from now? I hope the answer to that is yes, and that's only going to come if we elicit the answers from our elected and those who hope to be elected representatives for our town that can give us the answers that help us understand whether they're the right people to lead for us. So thank you. Jory, by the way, sorry.
That's okay. I wasn't sure what order we're going.
Jory Latham, you're here with the Agabonic Protection Committee, is that right?
Yes, I am Jory Latham, as Jeremy just said, and I am representing both the Agabonic Protection Committee and East Hampton Environmental Coalition. And I'm here to discuss habitat protection and stewardship, which is something that I think tends to fall into this sort of notion of that's something nice for our children to learn about because it's about the plants and animals and it's very cute and sweet. But, if we want to have a swimming pool here, that really is more important. So this is one of the issues that I think, in a way, is included in every other issue and includes every other issue. And I think a large part of what's been problematic is a kind of piecemeal approach to habitat protection where in some place gets preserved because of some animal or some plant, and then in this other place, that is preserved because of some other animal or plant. But it's the big picture that we really need to understand here, which both Bob and Jeremy have spoken about, and which comes under the heading of comprehensive. And we do have a comprehensive plan in this town, which is kind of a surprise to a lot of people because it hasn't really been utilized, and it actually is the law. And so one thing that it would be extremely important would be to find out which of our candidates are really aware of the comprehensive plan and willing to enforce it. Sometimes that makes difficult decisions. But the habitat that we are so blessed with here includes bays, harbors, streams, creeks, kettle holes, pasture, old pasture, woodlands, forests, as well as the well-known ocean beaches and bay beaches. All of these contain communities of animals and plants that are interrelated, interdependent, that require each other's existence to continue to create a balanced environment for all of us. These are not decorative. These are not luxury items. These are crucial to our having the East End that draws the second homeowners and the tourists that are so important to our economy, and also that provides the fish and shellfish and finfish that are important to the baymen and also sport fishers that come out here. And if we like vegetables and fruits, we need bees. If we like bees, we need the flowers that the bees need. And these things are all part of one big picture. And that is what really needs to be assessed and addressed by the people who are running our government. This has not been the case necessarily. And so it's very important that we have people in our government who take seriously and understand and have a real understanding and a real desire to continue to support the habitat that supports us all. And now I will turn over to
Hi.
Susan Harder.
I'm Susan Harder. I'm the New York State representative of the International Dark Sky Association and the founder of the Long Island Dark Sky Society. And I joined the coalition because we recognize that the health of our environment directly affects the health of people, as well as the economic health and vitality of the town for residents and our visitors. Since 1984, debilitating, distracting, and nuisance glare, light trespass, and the resulting sky glow have been regulated in the town of East Hampton. This law was strengthened as a result of the recommendations in the comprehensive plan in 2006. And we're seeking through this questionnaire for our candidates to find out the commitment to retain and to strengthen this code, a code which will result in safer roadways, assured privacy of property owners, and the preservation of a treasured natural resource, the dark night sky bright with stars. Our dark sky lighting regulations and the review process that assures compliance may be eroded under a plan to repeal the law and replace it with one that will increase light pollution in our town. The candidates will be asked to support our 2006 lighting code with updates for new technologies and to assure compliance if elected. And people ask me often how I got involved in this issue in the first place, and it was because I had light coming in my window from my neighbor's floodlights. And since that time, it's been about 10 or 15 years, many other people have complained and gotten results from our code enforcement. But recently, many studies have been done about this phenomenon of light at night intruding on our bedrooms, and the AMA issued us an executive summary report where they wrote, the primary concerns with nighttime lighting include potential carcinogenic effects related to melatonin suppression, especially breast cancer. Other diseases that may be exacerbated by circadian disruption include obesity, diabetes, depression, mood disorders, and reproductive problems. And I've attended lectures by the scientists that are working on this issue, and it's irrefutable. So there's many reasons to control our outdoor lighting, and our hope is to be the leader that we've always been in East Hampton and set forth regulations and easy compliance to our codes. Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Cunningham. I'm the chairperson of the Quiet Skies Coalition, and I'm proud to be a member of the East Hampton Environmental Coalition. The issues that face our town in terms of environmental protection and the sustainability and interdependence of all the aforestated problems include, among them, noise disturbance. The East Hampton Airport is a major offender with noise impacts that have grown over the last 2 decades to intolerable levels, including sleep disturbance in the middle of the night and among other infractions. This election is important, and we really need these candidates that are running for town board to understand that there's a very unique opportunity in the next 12 months for the town of East Hampton to regain its control as municipal proprietor of the airport and refuse to accept Federal Aviation Administration subsidies for any future capital improvements at the airport until such time as adequate noise studies can be conducted and a business plan that reflects the airport's very likely self-sustainability through its own economic revenues. This problem is it's creeping into various areas of our town. The flight paths are now over the middle school in East Hampton. There have been recorded impacts on learning deficits for children who are exposed to loud noises during their school day. There is also evidence to support that cardiac disease, increased cardiac disease is a risk with sleep disturbance at night. So our coalition, the Quiet Skies Coalition, is representative of a number of groups on the East End because the entire East End is plagued by this issue. But right now we're very hopeful that the candidates running for town board in East Hampton will embrace these principles of the Quiet Skies Coalition, refuse FAA funding, conduct a business plan, a thorough business plan, and on January 1st of 2015, exert the rights of the proprietor as are in the best interests of its residents. Jim Matthews.
I'm Jim Matthews. I'm here to represent the Northwest Alliance, and I'm also here to wrap things up as the nominal spokesperson of the East Hampton Environmental Coalition. And I want to say a few words about the coalition itself, which is a group of at least 12 environmental groups in town. I don't know how many towns there are that have 12 groups, but we actually doesn't even represent all of them because some of them are afraid of appearing in public. because their interests are more private than that. Collectively, we represent at least 7,000 East Hampton citizens. We are not a minority interest in this town. Our issues are not a minority issue in this town. And we hope that in this time of our post-Sandy anguish, we understand the challenge of this particular time, which is that the ante has been upped. What was a threat of the future has become a reality. Rising sea levels are here now. Superstorms are a disastrous presence. We have to understand that the challenge for us is not only a scientific one to try to understand how we're supposed to untangle this problem, but it's really a question of leadership. And that's what this coalition is about, is to help us build in this town the leadership that's necessary to carry through what must be done to protect our future and our resources. To that end, we will again, as we did 2 years ago, circulate a petition today of 28 items that we will ask each candidate for office in town to complete as thoroughly as they can, so that the voters in this town are properly informed in detail the positions taken by each of the candidates, because those are the judgments that we hope will prevail in the coming election, that the environment will stand as a primary principle of progress in this town. Those results will be collected on October 11th, and around Columbus Day we'll release them to the public, and we hope that the press will continue to cover what the candidates for town board and town supervisor have to say about these things. In addition, there will be a meeting convened by the concerned citizens of Montauk on October 20th to have an open discussion of all of the candidates in a public forum. So I thank you for coming, but I'm not going to get away with that, because Sass is next to me and bigger than me, and he'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, just very briefly, I'm Alexander Peters, president of Amagansett Springs Aquifer Protection, and also just speaking the truth for the Montauk Indian Nation as well. Not to reiterate what Bob has so eloquently said about all the things that we need to do in this town as far as water is concerned, there's just one area that I'd like to focus on that Jory mentioned very importantly as well. With this questionnaire, we need to flush out and find out which candidates are going to truly start obeying the laws of the town of East Hampton again, because the last two administrations have not followed the comprehensive plan. And that is absolutely vital for the voters to know who is going to fulfill the comprehensive plan. We have lost vitally important areas to protect the aquifer, and vitally important areas that we feel also contain tremendous amounts of Montauk history, and the Montauk Nation is about to regain its status and state recognition once again, and it's really important for both of these things work in conjunction. As Jory so eloquently said, so many of the issues are so closely intertwined. And we are just here to say we really want to see the aquifer protected, and we vitally need candidates that are going to follow the comprehensive plan, which has not been followed. Too many vitally important areas have been developed that should have been preserved, and the impact is now being found, as Bob said so eloquently, in our bays, because what goes into our groundwater is going to be in our bays in just a few years. Thank you.